The great hall of the Galactic Council was quiet, except for the soft hum of translation devices. Park Tae-ho stood at the speaker's podium, looking out at the assembled aliens. He had done this same thing hundreds of times before, but today was different. The Zephyrians sat in their floating chairs, their blue skin shimmering under the artificial lights. The mantoids clicked their claws nervously on their stone seats. The crystalline Nexari remained perfectly still, as they always did. All of them were waiting for him to speak. Park Tae-ho reached up and unpinned the golden badge from his uniform. The badge showed he was Earth's ambassador to the Council. He had worn it for 15 years. Now he placed it gently on the podium. With a small click, behind him, every human in the hall stood up at the same time. Dr. Kim So-ra closed her research files. Admiral Choi Min-ho turned off his tactical screens. Engineer Lee Da-eun disconnected her translation device from the main system. They all moved like they had practiced this moment many times. The Zephyrian leader, Velnath, made a sound like wind through metal tubes. His translator turned it into words. "Ambassador Park, what is the meaning of this display?" Park Tae-ho smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile people made when they were tired of being patient. "We are leaving." Leaving? The mantoid representative, Clickstar, clicked his claws faster. "You cannot simply leave a council session. There are protocols. There are procedures." "No," Park Tae-ho said quietly. "We are leaving the council. All of us. Every human. We are going home." The hall erupted in noise. Aliens chittered, buzzed, hummed, and made sounds that had no names. Their translators worked overtime, filling the air with overlapping voices. "This is impossible! You cannot abandon your duties. What about your commitments? What about the trade agreements?" Park Tae-ho waited for the noise to die down. When it did, he spoke again. His voice was calm and steady. "For 50 years, humans have been part of this council. We have shared our knowledge. We have shared our technology. We have shared our ideas. We have helped build trade routes. We have helped solve conflicts. We have helped make peace between species that had been fighting for centuries." He paused and looked around the room. "And for 50 years, you have treated us like children. You have told us we are too young to understand, too primitive to have good ideas, too weak to make important decisions. You have taken our gifts and called them crude. You have taken our help and called it amateur." Dr. Kim So-ra stepped forward. She had been the council's top expert on biological sciences for 20 years. "Last week, the Threnody asked for help with their crop failure. I gave them the solution. Counselor Merthen said my work was adequate for a human effort, and that they would have their own scientists improve it." Admiral Choi Min-ho spoke next. 2 months ago, the Valdorian fleet was lost in the Spiral Nebula. Human rescue ships found them. Human medical teams saved 300 lives. The Valdorian High Command thanked us by saying we had done, surprisingly, well for such a young species. Engineer Lee Da-eun held up a small device. "This is a quantum communicator. I designed it. It allows instant communication across the galaxy. Every species uses them now. But when I presented the design 5 years ago, the Council said it was interesting but probably flawed, and that Nexari engineers should check my work." Park Tae-ho nodded to each of them. Then he looked back at the alien representatives. "We are tired of being patted on the head like pets who learned a new trick. We are tired of being told we should be grateful for our place at your table. So, we are leaving." The Nexari representative, a being of living crystal called Zuran, finally spoke. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "You are being emotional. This is a human weakness. You will calm down and return to your duties." Park Tae-ho's smile became even sadder. "We are not being emotional. We planned this for 20 years. Every human in Council space received the same message this morning. Come home. By tomorrow, there will not be a single human left in any Council territory." The hall went completely silent. Even the translation devices seemed shocked. "You cannot do this," Velnath said. "Your colonies are here. Your businesses are here. Your lives are here. Our colonies are already empty. Dr. Kim Sora said. Our businesses are already closed. Our people are already gone. But the infrastructure, Clickstar clicked frantically. The trade networks, the communication systems, the medical facilities, humans run half of them. We do not run them, Admiral Choi Min-ho said. We built them. We maintained them. We improved them. But we do not run them anymore. Engineer Lee Da-eun walked to her control station. She typed in a few commands. Around the room, screens started going dark. The translation system made a sound like a sigh and went quiet. The air recycling system stopped its gentle hum. Emergency lighting came on, casting strange shadows. What have you done? Zuran's crystal body flashed angry red colors. I have disconnected human systems from council infrastructure, Lee Da-eun said. Do not worry. Your emergency systems will keep you alive. But the enhanced systems, the improved systems, the systems that made life comfortable and easy, those were human additions. Park Tae-ho picked up his badge from the podium. He looked at it for a moment, then put it in his pocket. For 50 years, we tried to be good partners. We thought if we worked hard enough, if we helped enough, if we proved ourselves enough, you would see us as equals. We were wrong. He turned to walk away, then stopped. You will not starve. You will not die. You will not lose your civilizations. But you will learn something. You will learn what it was like before humans came. You will learn to appreciate what you had when you still had it. The humans walked toward the exit together. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet hall. No alien tried to stop them. They seemed too shocked to move. At the door, Park Tae-ho turned back one last time. You called us children. You called us primitive. You called us weak. Perhaps you were right. Perhaps we were too childish to demand respect. Perhaps we were too primitive to understand that you would never see us as equals. Perhaps we were too weak to walk away sooner. He paused. But we are not too weak to walk away now. The doors closed behind them with a soft whisper. For a long moment, the council hall remained silent. Then the arguing began. But there were no humans left to hear it. Outside, human ships were already lifting off from the council station. They formed orderly lines and jumped to hyperspace without fanfare. No one said goodbye. No one made threats. No one made speeches about revenge or justice. They simply left, and in their wake, they left behind 50 years of infrastructure, technology, and knowledge that the aliens had come to depend on without ever realizing it. Systems began to fail. Networks began to break down. The comfortable, easy life that the council species had enjoyed started to crack at the edges. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had not threatened anyone. They had not destroyed anything. They had simply stopped holding everything together and walked away. Captain Yoon Jae-sung was drinking his morning coffee when the first distress call came through. His cargo ship, the Mugunghwa, was 3 days out from the old council borders when his communication system started beeping like crazy. The call was from a Karelian trade station. Yoon had delivered supplies there many times over the years. The station manager, a six-armed being named Kritok, appeared on his screen looking very upset. Captain Yoon! Thank the void winds I found you. We need human help urgently. Our cargo sorting system has stopped working. Ships are backing up everywhere. We have not been able to process a single shipment in 2 days. Yoon took another sip of his coffee. I am sorry, Kritok, but I am no longer working in council space. I am going home. Home? But humans do not abandon their contracts. You are the most reliable species in the galaxy. We were, Yoon said quietly. Check your sorting system's main processor. Look for the human-made efficiency algorithms. I think you will find they are no longer running. Kritok's orange skin turned pale yellow. But those systems have been running for 15 years. We do not know how to operate without them. Then you will have to learn, Yoon said. He ended the call. Over the next few hours, more calls came in. A Threnody agricultural colony was facing crop failure because their soil processing machines had stopped working. A Valdorian military base could not launch their fighters because the launch control system was offline. A Nexari research station had lost all power because their fusion reactor's safety protocols were not responding. Every problem was the same. Human-built systems were shutting down. Human-designed improvements were failing. Human-created efficiency programs were stopping. Yoon had been a cargo pilot for 30 years. He knew the trade routes better than almost anyone. He also knew a secret that most aliens did not. Humans had quietly rebuilt almost every major system in Council space. Not replaced, rebuilt, made better, made smarter, made more efficient. The aliens thought they were using their own technology with some human assistance. They were wrong. They were using human technology disguised to look like their own systems. 3 weeks later, Yoon received a message from his old friend, Dr. Han Ye-jin. She had been the Council's top expert on quantum communication technology. Now she was working at a research station in human space in a system called New Seoul. Jae-sung, her message said, "I hope you are well. I thought you might find this interesting. We are monitoring Council space communications. The aliens are trying to reverse engineer our technology. They cannot even figure out how our quantum transmitters work. They keep trying to take them apart, but every time they do, the devices self-destruct." She paused in her recording, and Yoon could see her smiling. They never realized that our quantum communicators were not just devices. They were part of a network that required constant connection to human space to function. When we left, we turned off our side of the network. Now they have very expensive paperweights. The message continued. The Valdorians are having the worst time. Their new warships, the ones they were so proud of, they cannot hit anything. Their targeting systems were based on human sensor technology. Without our satellites and sensor networks feeding them data, their weapons are useless. General Singh told me that Valdorian pilots are having to learn how to aim manually, like their ancestors did 300 years ago. Yoon laughed despite himself. General Singh Kyung-min had been the human military advisor to the Valdorian fleet. He was a good man, but he had always been frustrated by how the Valdorians took credit for human innovations while treating human officers like junior assistants. Dr. Han's message went on. The funniest part is the Nexari. You know how proud they are of their logic and reasoning? They keep sending us mathematical proofs, explaining why our quantum technology cannot work. They say our theories violate basic principles of physics. But somehow, our impossible technology worked perfectly for 30 years. She paused again. Of course, they do not understand that we discovered new principles of physics. We just never told them about it. Why would we? They always said human science was crude and unrefined. Yoon saved the message and continued his journey home. But as his ship traveled through space, he kept receiving reports from other human captains who were also leaving Council space. Captain Park Hae-young reported that the Threnody had abandoned 3 of their colony worlds. Their terraforming equipment had stopped working, and they could not figure out how to fix it. The equipment looked like standard Threnody technology, but the control systems had been secretly upgraded with human improvements over the years. Captain Lee Soo-jin sent a report about the Zephyrian mining operations. Without human logistics software, their mining ships were taking 3 times longer to extract resources. The Zephyrians did not even know they had been using human software. They thought the efficiency improvements had come from their own engineers. But the most interesting report came from Dr. Ryu Sang-wook, who was running a deep space observatory in human territory. He was monitoring Council space from far away, watching what happened after the humans left. The Council tried to hold an emergency session, his report said. But their translation system is not working properly. It turns out that Lee Da-eun had made thousands of small improvements to the system over the years. Without those improvements, the translator cannot handle complex diplomatic language. The aliens can understand each other when they talk about simple things, but when they try to discuss complicated political issues, the system fails. Dr. Ryu's report described the chaos that followed. The Zephyrians accused the Mantoids of deliberately sabotaging the translation system. The Mantoids blamed the Nexari for being too logical and not emotional enough to understand other species. The Nexari said everyone else was being irrational and that the problem was obviously caused by inferior alien engineering. They are fighting about everything, Dr. Ryu continued. Old arguments that had been settled years ago are starting again. Border disputes that human diplomats had helped resolve are flaring up. Trade agreements that depended on human logistics are falling apart. Yoon was not surprised. Humans had been the glue holding the Council together for decades, not because they were stronger or smarter than other species, but because they were good at finding solutions that worked for everyone. They were good at compromise. They were good at seeing problems from different perspectives, and now they were gone. As the Mugunghwa approached human space, Yoon received one final message from Council territory. It was from Velnath, the Zephyrian leader who had been so shocked by the human departure. "Captain Yoon," the message began, "I am sending this message in the hope that you will reconsider your people's decision to leave. The Council is willing to discuss improved terms for human membership. We acknowledge that perhaps we did not fully appreciate human contributions in the past." Yoon almost laughed. "Almost. We are prepared to offer humans a permanent seat on the High Council," Velnath continued. "We are also prepared to recognize human achievements in science and technology. Please, can we not find a way to work together again?" Yoon looked at the message for a long time. Then he deleted it without responding. The Mugunghwa crossed into human space, and Yoon felt something he had not felt in years. Relief. He was home. He was among people who valued his work, who respected his knowledge, who treated him as an equal instead of a useful pet. Behind him, in council space, the first cracks were spreading. Systems were failing. Alliances were breaking. The comfortable order that had existed for 50 years was coming apart. The humans had not destroyed it. They had simply stopped maintaining it, and without them, it was slowly falling apart. Professor Bae Yunji watched the galaxy tear itself apart from her research station in the void between. The station was hidden in the empty space between star systems, where no government claimed territory. It was the perfect place to observe. What happened when the careful balance of the old council finally collapsed? 2 years had passed since the humans left. 2 years of watching civilizations that had lived in peace for decades suddenly remember why they had hated each other before humans arrived to mediate their conflicts. Bae's job was to record everything. Someone needed to document what happened when the galaxy lost its peacekeepers. Someone needed to remember the lessons of this time, even if the aliens were too proud to learn them. Her first report had been about the small problems: trade routes breaking down, communication systems failing, industrial accidents becoming more common as safety systems designed by humans stopped working properly. But now the problems were much bigger. The Zephyrians and Mantoids were at war again. Their border conflict had been frozen for 30 years, kept peaceful by a complex treaty that human diplomats had spent 5 years negotiating. The treaty had required careful monitoring and regular adjustments to keep both sides happy. Without human mediators, the treaty had lasted exactly 3 months. The war started over something stupid. A Mantoid mining ship had crossed into what the Zephyrians claimed was their territory. Before humans left, such incidents happened all the time. Human peacekeepers would investigate, determine who was right, and arrange compensation if needed. Both sides trusted human judgment because humans had no stake in the conflict. Now there were no human peacekeepers. The Zephyrians demanded the Mantoids pay damages. The Mantoids said they had done nothing wrong. Without neutral mediators, both sides assumed the worst about each other's intentions. Within a week, Zephyrian patrol ships were firing on Mantoid freighters. Within a month, both sides had mobilized their military fleets. Now they were fighting. A real war with real casualties. Bae documented it all. The battles were messy and inefficient because both sides had relied on human-designed tactical systems for decades. Zephyrian commanders could not coordinate their fleets properly. Mantoid weapons systems kept malfunctioning because their targeting software had been quietly upgraded by human technicians over the years. But people were still dying. Ships were still being destroyed. The war was spreading to involve other species, who had been drawn into the conflict. The Corellians supported the Zephyrians because they needed Zephyrian trade routes. The Aquatic Federation supported the Mantoids because they had old grudges against Zephyrian expansion. Soon there were 4 species fighting instead of 2. From her hidden station, Bae received reports from other human observers scattered across the galaxy. The news was always bad. Dr. Moon Ji-hwan reported from the former Threnody territories. The Threnody had been one of the most successful species in the Council, with colonies in 50 star systems. They were master terraformers who could turn dead worlds into garden planets. Except their terraforming technology had been gradually improved by human scientists over 4 decades. Small changes that made the process faster, safer, more efficient. Changes so subtle that the Threnody never realized how much they depended on human innovations. When the humans left, the terraforming equipment started breaking down. Atmospheric processors failed. Weather control systems went offline. Soil enrichment plants stopped working. 17 Threnody colony worlds had become uninhabitable again. Millions of people had been evacuated. The Threnody government was spending all its resources trying to keep their remaining colonies alive. They had no time or energy to help with galactic politics. The Threnody refugees had nowhere to go. Before humans left, there had been refugee assistance programs managed by human humanitarian organizations. Those organizations were gone now. The remaining council species were too busy with their own problems to help. Captain O Dong-wook sent reports from the independent trading routes. He was one of the few humans still operating in the outer regions of former council space, carrying supplies to isolated colonies that had been forgotten by everyone else. The trade networks are completely collapsed, his latest message said. Without human logistics algorithms, nobody can efficiently coordinate cargo shipments anymore. I watched a Karelian trade station throw away tons of food because they could not figure out how to distribute it to the colonies that needed it. Meanwhile, 3 systems away, people are starving. O's reports described a galaxy that was slowly forgetting how to take care of itself. Supply chains that had operated smoothly for decades were breaking down. Medical supplies were not reaching the places that needed them. Food distribution was chaotic and inefficient. The worst part was that the aliens were too proud to admit they needed help. They kept insisting that they could solve these problems themselves. They just needed time to adapt. But they were not adapting. They were failing. Engineer Kang Soo-jin sent technical reports from her monitoring station near the old council borders. She was tracking the technological regression happening across the galaxy. They are trying to rebuild everything from scratch, her report explained. But they do not understand the underlying principles of the systems they are trying to copy. Nexari engineers spent 6 months trying to recreate a human-designed power plant. When they finally got it working, it was only operating at 30% efficiency. The Nexari were supposed to be the most advanced technological species in the galaxy. If they could not figure out human technology, nobody could. Kang's reports showed that most species were giving up on trying to replicate human innovations. Instead, they were going back to older, simpler technologies. Technologies that worked, but were less efficient, less safe, less reliable. It was like watching the galaxy move backward in time. But the most heartbreaking reports came from Dr. Shin Hee-kyung, who was monitoring the breakdown of interspecies cooperation. For 50 years, the different species had worked together on major projects, joint research stations, shared defense networks, collaborative exploration missions. All of that was ending. The crystalline Nexari had withdrawn completely to their home system. They declared that the other species were too irrational and emotional to work with. They would solve their own problems using pure logic. The Aquatic Federation sealed their borders and stopped communicating with air-breathing species. They said the galaxy had become too chaotic and violent for peaceful aquatic beings. The Valdorian Empire started conquering systems that had been abandoned by other species. They claimed they were restoring order, but really they were just taking advantage of the chaos to expand their territory. Even the species that were not fighting each other had stopped cooperating. Trust had broken down. Without human diplomats, to facilitate communication and build relationships, the different species defaulted to suspicion and isolation. From her station in the void between, Bay watched it all and recorded everything. She documented the collapse of a galactic civilization that had seemed so strong and stable just 2 years earlier. But the most important thing she documented was something the aliens still did not understand. The collapse was not happening because humans had sabotaged anything. It was not happening because humans had taken revenge. It was happening because humans had been the invisible foundation that everything else was built on. They had been the mediators, the innovators, the problem solvers, the bridge builders. They had been the species that made everyone else's lives easier without ever demanding credit or recognition. And when they left, they had taken that foundation with them. The galaxy was not falling apart because humans had broken it. The galaxy was falling apart because humans were no longer there to hold it together. The aliens had spent 50 years taking human contributions for granted. They had assumed that the peace, prosperity, and technological advancement they enjoyed was natural. They had assumed it would continue forever regardless of how they treated the people who made it possible. They had been wrong, and now they were learning the true cost of that mistake. 5 years had passed since the humans disappeared. 5 years of war, collapse, and chaos. The galaxy that remained was a shadow of what it had been during the golden age of the Council. Ambassador John Tae-min sat in his private quarters on the abandoned Council station, speaking to a recording device he kept hidden in his desk. He was the only alien who truly understood what had happened. He was also the only one brave enough to say it out loud, even if nobody would ever hear his words. "They all think the humans left suddenly," he said to the recorder. "They think it was an emotional decision made in anger. They are wrong. I have been studying human behavior for 30 years. I was the mantoid representative who worked most closely with human diplomats. I know how they think." John paused and looked out the window at the empty docking bays where human ships used to arrive every day. The humans planned this for decades. Every human in Council space received the same message on the same day: "Come home." That kind of coordination does not happen overnight. They had been preparing for this moment for 20, maybe 30 years. He had spent months investigating after the humans left. What he found had shocked him. Human colonies that had seemed permanent and established had been quietly liquidated over several years. Human businesses had been slowly transferring their assets to human space. Human families had been sending their children to schools in human territory instead of Council institutions. They knew this day would come, John continued. They knew that eventually the Council would push them too far. They knew that they would have to choose between accepting permanent second-class status or leaving entirely. So they prepared for both possibilities. The preparation had been incredibly thorough. Humans had built backup systems for everything they created in Council space. Every innovation, every improvement, every technological advancement had been duplicated in human territory. When they left, they took all the knowledge with them. But more importantly, they had built something else. Something that terrified Jian when he finally understood its implications. They built independence, he told the recorder. Complete, total independence from the rest of the galaxy. They do not need us anymore. They never will need us again. The realization had come slowly. At first, the remaining Council species had assumed that humans would have to come back eventually. Humans had been integrated into galactic society for 50 years. Surely they could not survive on their own. But they were surviving. More than surviving. They were thriving. Scout Commander Kang Soo-jin had led the only successful expedition to find human space. Her mission had taken 2 years to organize and had required the cooperation of 3 different species to provide ships, supplies, and navigation data. John had read her classified report. What she found had changed everything. The Sol system, humanity's home, was surrounded by a barrier of energy that no alien technology could understand. Kang's ships could detect massive construction projects happening inside the barrier. Entire worlds were being reshaped. Space itself was being modified in ways that violated everything the aliens thought they knew about physics. When Kang's expedition approached the barrier, they received a single message. It appeared on their screens in perfect mantoid script. "You made your choice. We made ours. Do not follow." The message was signed by Director Lee Young-ho, who had been Kang's closest friend when he worked for the Council's scientific division. The friendship that had lasted 20 years was over. The message made that clear. Kang had tried to respond, but her transmissions disappeared into the barrier without acknowledgement. She had tried to scan the barrier with every sensor at her disposal, but the readings made no sense. According to her instruments, the barrier existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. 11 dimensions. The Council's most advanced scientists barely understood 4 dimensions. But the truly devastating discovery was what Kang found outside the barrier. Every human colony, every human outpost, every human presence in the galaxy had been systematically evacuated. Not abandoned, not destroyed. Evacuated. The evacuation had been so thorough that the aliens did not even realize it was happening until it was complete. Human families had simply packed up and left. Human workers had finished their shifts and never returned. Human businesses had closed their doors and disappeared overnight, and they had taken everything with them. Every piece of technology, every scientific instrument, every cultural artifact, every scrap of knowledge. The empty human facilities were not just abandoned buildings, they were carefully cleaned shells that contained no useful information about human capabilities or intentions. They erased themselves from our history, Gian said to his recorder. 50 years of human presence in council space, and they left behind no evidence of how advanced they really were. The search efforts had been pathetic. The remaining council species were too busy fighting each other to mount a serious expedition. The few attempts to find human space had failed because nobody understood where humans had originally come from. For 50 years, humans had been part of the council, but they had never told anyone the location of their home systems. Earth was a legend. Sol was a myth. Human space was a mystery that humans had never bothered to solve for their alien allies. Now the aliens realized why. Humans had always planned to go home eventually. Dr. Park's son Young had managed to track down some of the evacuation routes by studying old shipping records. Her investigation showed that the human exodus had been even more impressive than anyone realized. They moved 12 billion people, her report stated. 12 billion humans living in council space, and they moved all of them back to human territory in less than 6 months. The logistics alone are beyond anything the council has ever accomplished. The evacuation had required thousands of ships, millions of tons of supplies, and perfect coordination across hundreds of star systems. It was the largest population movement in galactic history, and it had happened so smoothly that most aliens did not notice until it was over. But the most disturbing part of Dr. Park's investigation was what she discovered about human technology. The abandoned human facilities contained traces of manufacturing processes that should have been impossible. Molecular assemblers that could build anything from basic elements. Energy generators that produced power from vacuum fluctuations, faster than light. Communication systems that worked without relay stations. They were not using our technology with human improvements, Dr. Park's report concluded. They were using human technology disguised to look compatible with our systems. Their real capabilities are far beyond anything we imagined. John had read every report, studied every piece of evidence, interviewed every expert who had worked closely with humans. The conclusion was inescapable and terrifying. We were never their equals, he told his recorder. We were never even close to being their equals. They were so far ahead of us technologically that they had to pretend to be primitive just to communicate with us. For 50 years, humans had been playing a role. They had been pretending to be just another species, struggling to understand the universe. They had been pretending that alien technology was impressive. They had been pretending that alien knowledge was valuable. They had been pretending to need the council when the truth was that the council needed them desperately. They were teaching us, John realized. Everything they did, every gift they gave us, every problem they solved for us, they were trying to help us become better. They were trying to lift us up to their level. But the council had been too proud to learn, too arrogant to admit that the primitive humans might have something valuable to teach, too blind to see that their newest members were actually their most advanced. Now it was too late. The humans were gone, and they were not coming back. The galaxy they left behind was falling apart, and there was nobody left who knew how to fix it. John turned off his recorder and sat in the darkness of his empty quarters. Outside, the abandoned council station drifted through space like a tomb, a monument to the greatest mistake in galactic history, the mistake of taking humanity for granted. 20 years had passed since the humans walked away. 20 years of struggling, failing, and slowly learning to accept a galaxy that would never again be what it once was. Historian Dr. Moon Ji-hyun sat in her archive ship, the Memory of Earth, compiling the final records of the old galactic order. Her ship drifted through space between the ruins of what had once been great civilizations, collecting the last stories of the time when humans lived among the stars and made everything better just by being there. The council was gone. The great hall where representatives of dozens of species had once met to discuss trade, diplomacy, and cooperation was now a museum. A few dedicated Nexari maintained it as a reminder of what unity had once looked like, but nobody came to visit anymore. In place of the grand galactic government, Smaller alliances had formed, groups of 3 or 4 species working together on simple problems. Nothing like the ambitious projects of the old days. Nothing like the golden age when human engineers could make the impossible seem routine. The Zephyrians and Mantoids had finally ended their war, but only because they had exhausted themselves fighting. Both species had lost so many ships and so many people that they could no longer afford to continue. They now avoided each other entirely, their territories separated by empty space that nobody dared to cross. The Threnody civilization had collapsed completely. Their remaining colonies struggled to survive with ancient terraforming technology that broke down constantly. Most of their people had become refugees, scattered across the galaxy and dependent on the charity of other species. The Nexari had retreated into pure mathematics and philosophy. They spent their time proving that the universe was logical and orderly, even as the evidence of chaos surrounded them. They had given up trying to understand human technology and declared it an impossible paradox that could not exist. The Aquatic Federation had sealed their borders permanently. They communicated with other species only through automated trading posts that they monitored from a distance. Trust had become too dangerous in a galaxy where cooperation could lead to betrayal and war. But Dr. Moon was not just recording the failures and collapses. She was also documenting something else, something that most aliens refused to talk about but could not ignore: the rumors. Captain Oh Dong-wook brought her the first stories when his trading ship docked with the memory of Earth. He was one of the last independent traders still operating in the outer regions, carrying supplies to forgotten colonies and isolated outposts. "I was delivering medical supplies to a Corellian mining station in the outer spiral," he told Dr. Moon. "The station was failing. Their fusion reactor was breaking down and they had no way to fix it. The whole colony was going to die." Oh paused to sip his tea. He was an old man now, weathered by decades of space travel and the hardships of life in a broken galaxy. "When I arrived, the reactor was working again. Perfect working order. The station manager said they had woken up one morning and found new control software installed in their computer systems. Software that was far more advanced than anything they had ever seen." Dr. Moon made notes as O continued his story. The software was written in mathematical notation that the Corellians could barely understand. But it worked. It made their reactor run at 98% efficiency. Before, they had been lucky to get 60%. O had similar stories from a dozen other colonies. Failing systems that suddenly started working again. Broken equipment that was mysteriously repaired overnight. Technical problems that were solved by the appearance of new software or hardware that nobody could explain. "Nobody talks about it officially," O said. "But everybody knows what is happening. The humans are still out there. They are still watching. And sometimes when people are really in trouble, they help." Dr. Moon collected hundreds of these stories over the years. A Mantoid research station that discovered a cure for a plague in their computer files one morning. A Zephyrian colony ship that found detailed navigation charts to a perfect new world waiting in their databanks. An Aquatic Federation outpost that received a message with instructions for building a new type of water purification system. All of the help came anonymously. No demands for payment or recognition. No messages explaining why the help was given. Just solutions to problems that otherwise would have meant death or disaster for the people involved. The help always came with a pattern. It was given only to colonies or groups that were truly desperate. It never involved military technology or weapons, and it always included knowledge that was far beyond what the recipients could have developed themselves. Engineer Lim Hai-sol had spent 10 years analyzing the anonymous gifts. She was one of the few aliens who had worked closely enough with humans to recognize their technological signature. "This is definitely human technology," her report stated. "But it is not the same technology they used when they lived among us. This is much more advanced, decades, maybe centuries more advanced." The implications were staggering. In the 20 years since humans had left Council space, they had not just maintained their technological superiority, they had advanced far beyond what they had been before. Dr. Moon received confirmation of this from the most unlikely source, a message from Admiral Park Sun-mi, the last human officer to serve with an alien military force. "Dr. Moon," the message began, I know you are documenting this period of galactic history. I thought you should know the truth about what happened to my people. The message had appeared in Dr. Moon's personal files without any record of how it had been transmitted. Another impossibility that Dr. Moon was learning to accept in a universe where humans existed. We did not disappear. Admiral Park's message continued. We went home, but home was not what it used to be. When humans first joined the Council 50 years ago, we were already more advanced than the other species. But we wanted to be part of something larger than ourselves. We wanted to share the galaxy with friends. The message explained what Dr. Moon had suspected but never dared to believe. For 50 years, we held ourselves back. We used primitive technology so we could communicate with species that had not yet discovered some of the basic principles of science. We pretended that your achievements were impressive so you would not feel inferior. We acted like students when we were really the teachers. Admiral Park's message described the real human civilization that had existed hidden behind the facade they presented to the Council. While human diplomats were negotiating trade agreements, human scientists were solving the fundamental equations of reality. While human engineers were fixing your machines, human researchers were learning to manipulate space and time itself. While human peacekeepers were stopping your wars, human explorers were discovering new dimensions of existence. The message paused, and Dr. Moon could imagine the elderly admiral choosing her words carefully. We left because we realized that you would never accept us as equals. Not because you could not, but because you would not. You needed to see us as inferior to feel secure about yourselves, and we were tired of pretending to be less than we were just to make you comfortable. The final part of the message was the most important. We still care about you. We still want you to succeed and grow and become better than you are. That is why we help when we can. But we will never again diminish ourselves to fit into your expectations. We will never again pretend to be primitive just to make you feel advanced. Dr. Moon stared at the message for a long time after reading it. Then she added it to her archives, another piece of the puzzle that explained how the galaxy had broken and why it could never be fixed. The truth was simple and devastating. Humans had been the foundation that everything else was built on. They had been the teachers disguised as students, the advanced civilization pretending to be primitive, the patient mentors who had spent 50 years trying to help their alien neighbors become better without ever making them feel small. And when that patience finally ran out, they had quietly gathered their people and their knowledge and their impossible technology, and they had gone home to build something better. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had not destroyed their enemies. They had not taken revenge on the species that had treated them badly. They had simply stopped pretending to be less than they were, and they had left the galaxy to face the consequences of losing the best friends it had ever had. Dr. Moon closed her files and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were building wonders that alien minds could barely imagine. Somewhere out there, they were becoming something magnificent and terrible and completely beyond the understanding of the species they had left behind. The galaxy would survive. Some species would adapt and grow stronger. Others would fade away into history. New alliances would form. New technologies would be developed. New civilizations would rise. But it would never again be the golden age when humans walked among the stars and made everything they touched a little bit better. That age was over, and it would never come again. The humans had walked away without a sound and left the galaxy forever changed.